Hi, I'm Bonnie Barker with BonnieBCrochet.com, and today I want to teach you how to make an easy beginner knit scarf. This scarf works up very quickly using a large set of knitting needles and some super bulky yarn. You can make this twice as long as the one I'm showing you here simply by adding an extra ball of yarn. Okay, if you've never been to my channel before, I just wanted to ask you if you could hit that subscribe button, and if you hit the notification bell and the like if you like the project, that would be really appreciated. Well, let me go ahead and show you what you're going to need. For this project, I'm recommending one skein of a super bulky weight yarn. I'm going to be using Perfection by Kramer Yarns. This is 30% merino wool and 70% acrylic. And here's some more information. This is a size 6, so this is not just a 5 but a 6, which is more of a super bulky weight yarn. And this particular skein has approximately 90 yards or 150 grams, 5.25 ounces. Okay, I'm also suggesting that you have a set of circular needles. These are all connected. Let me make sure you can see that with a wire. And these are size 13. Okay, I'll go ahead and put the millimeters right across the bottom there. And as always, I'm recommending that you have a yarn needle for hiding loose ends and a pair of scissors. Well, let's go ahead and start. Okay, now we are ready to do a long tail cast on. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you pull off approximately 30 inches. Okay, so approximately 30 inches of yarn, and then we're going to make our slip knot. Okay, so this is probably a little more than 30 inches, but you're going to need just that or a little less than that for this long tail cast on. So we go ahead and we put this on our needle, just like so. If you've never done a long tail cast on, I'm going to show you how I do mine very slowly. Now, we have these two strands hanging, one which is the one that does have an end right here, and then the other one that's connected to the ball. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our pointer and our thumbkin in between those two. We're going to grab them down here with these fingers rather, and then you should have your yarn like this. Let me do this for you again in case you've never done this. Put your pointer and thumb in between these two. Grab both of the strands with your other hand or fingers. I said it wrong again. Okay, and there you go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pull up. The needle goes up under your thumb and then around like that. And then pull it tight. Okay, so now we have two cast on, one which was the slip knot and then our first cast on stitch. We're going to do that 13 more times until we have a total of 15 loops on our needle. So that's 3, 4, and 5, 6. Now you see how this is starting to turn a little bit? You can let it go if you don't like the way it's untying there. Okay, and we're going to try this again, some more. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, almost halfway there. 8, 9, 10. I'm going to leave this down again so that it doesn't get untwirled there. Let's do a few more. So let's see, how many do we have now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We need 4 more. 12, 13, 14, and let it twist there, and 1 more. 15. So let's double check. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We have 15. Now this would be a good time for me to explain one thing. If you find that I'm going too fast at any point during the instruction, there's a little gear down here. If you click on that, you can actually select the playback speed and pick a slower speed or even a faster speed. For the left-handers, it's going to be on this side on the video. And if you're watching from a cell phone, there'll be 3 vertical dots right here. It'll be on this side for the left-hand video. And by clicking on that, you can also bring up the menu that will allow you to change the playback speed. Okay, now we have a little bit extra, which is okay. We can weave that in as we complete the project at a later time here. Okay, now we are going to just simply work the knit stitch, and I'm going to do this as slowly as I can. I'm just assuming that you all are not real familiar with knitting. Now, for those of you who are crocheters, I want to show you that my yarn hold for this project is exactly the same yarn hold that I use for my crochet projects. I'll give a minute here to explain. The yarn is going to lay across these 3 fingers, and then I'm going to use these 2, particularly the pinky, to be the brake man. Kind of, if you can imagine a 4-man bobsled during the Olympics. The guy in the back is the one who holds the brake, and that's what my pinky is. He's the brake man or brake person, whatever. And then so this yarn's going to go on top of this finger, and this finger is actually going to try to feed, by pushing up, it's going to feed the yarn to my project. Okay, and by using a good solid yarn hold in your non-dominant hand, you're actually going to go a long way and having better tension in your project from a very, very beginning. Okay, so, and now, just like in crochet, my tall man and my thumbkin, these 2 fingers, are actually going to hold the knitting needle. In crochet, these fingers, or finger and thumb, tend to hold the fabric that I'm crocheting. So it's very similar in that respect. My right hand, or my dominant hand, if you're watching a left-handed, then it'd be your left hand, is going to hold the needle in very much the same way I hold my crochet hook. So this is why I love continental knitting. Very, very similar to crochet. So now we're ready to begin the knit stitch. And for this, we are going to come behind the loop, wrap forward, pull that loop through, and slide it off. I'm going to do that again. Put the hook, or rather the needle through, wrap forward, pull it up, and then slide it off. And that's all we're going to do all the way across. I'm trying to go very slowly here. Stick the needle in, wrap forward, pull up a loop, and slide off. And the great thing about using big needles, big yarn, is that this will grow a lot faster, obviously, than using smaller yarn and smaller needles. And hopefully, you'll be able to see exactly what is going on. Personally, I prefer using wood. I like the way the yarn wraps around the wood. Gives it a little bit of friction, but not a lot. And it doesn't feel like, or it doesn't sound like silverware scraping in the drawer or, on the table when the needles touch. So that's just me. That's just my personal preference. Okay, and the last one, stick it in, wrap forward, pull up a loop, and take it off. Okay, so we have 1 row completed. Now we're going to do a few more rows like this. Okay, this is going to be just simply knit all the way across again. And just to let you know that this particular wire on my needles is really longer than I need, but it's just the one that I had available for this size. Okay, so we, again, putting our needle behind that stitch, pull up a loop, and slide off. In, wrap forward, pull up a loop, and slide off. I'm good to get that wire to go down. And we do this all the way across. Now you should have 15 loops for each row that will remain consistent throughout this project. I'm going to go ahead and get this to curl it down. There we go. Sometimes just twisting the hook or the needle. See, I keep wanting to say needle when I crochet and then hook when I'm knitting. Kind of crazy, but so you know what these are. These are needles. And, you know, as you get comfortable, you can go a little bit faster. Let's go ahead and get that wrapped. There we go. And so we're going to do this after I finish this row. We're going to do this a couple more times. All right. Looks like, okay, do you see what happened here? This has many fibers. I'm going to go ahead and slip this, but it's easy to fix. I'm going to slip that right back there where it belongs. That's what happens sometimes when you work with yarn that has a lot of strands like this. Okay, so now we have 2 rows completed. Now let's do 2 more. I'm going to do these off camera, but I will start this one. There we go. Sorry about that. This wire is way too long for this project, but anyway, it's still usable. All right, so now I'm just going to do another 2 rows where you're just doing the knit stitch, sticking it in right there behind the loop, wrapping it forward, pulling it up and taking it off. So go ahead and do this for 2 more rows. Okay, after finish working 4 rows of the knit stitch both directions, you get what they call the garter stitch. Okay, so now we're ready to begin the pattern stitch that we're going to use throughout the rest of this project up until the last 4 rows. Okay, so we are going to work 3 knit stitches at the beginning and at the end of each row. And the stitches in between here, there are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches in between the 3 and the 3. We're going to work what we call a purl stitch. Okay, that's the other major stitch that we use in knitting. Okay, so first we're going to knit 3 stitches, just like we've been doing. 1, 2, 3. Now to work a purl stitch, we're going to bring our yarn to the front. We're going to stick the needle in kind of from the back to the front loop. Instead of going in this way, we're sticking it in backwards. And then we're going to wrap the hook in between the needles like this. And then slide it off. I'll do this again. The yarn is in front of you now. It's in front, and you bring the needles from the back, and the yarn goes in between the needles. And you pull up a loop and slide it off. I'll do this again a little slowly. The needle comes up towards you. The yarn goes in between the 2 needles. Pull up a loop and slide off. Let me get a better yarn hold here. You want to make sure that we leave the last 3 loops, because we're going to do something different. We're going to go back to the knitting. So we have 3 loops, 4 loops there. That is a purl. Okay, we have 3 loops left. What we're going to do is we're going to knit them all. Knit, knit, and knit. Back to what we were doing before. Okay, let's take a look at what we have here. Okay, so let's look at this side, and you can see how the purl looks different on the other side. Okay, now we're going to do the other stitch repeat. Okay, so that would be on the stitch repeat, that would be, let's say we'll call that row 1, and then we're going to call the next row row 2 on our stitch repeat. Okay, now for this next stitch repeat, we are just going to knit all the way across, just like we were doing with the first 4 rows. Just knit completely across. And then once we do this, you'll see how these 2 rows will look different. I'm just going to go across, all the way across with you. You'll also notice that working the purl and the knit together, that it tends to be a little on the looser side, but that's okay. We can always block this. It'll be fine. Okay, so we've knitted that all the way across. And let's take a look. See what we have now. It's pretty cool. All right, so now we're going to go back to the stitch repeat of row 1, which again was knit 3 and then purl 9 and then knit 3 again. So we do 3 knit. Let's try that again. One, 2, 3. And also notice that my left hand is pushing these loops closer towards the tip of the needle. So now after we've done the 3 knit, we're going to do purl. We're going to bring the yarn in front, and then this goes here. Yarn goes in between the needles, pull up a loop and slide. Let's try that again. The purl might be a little more challenging, and if you find that to be the case, then you can just make this scarf just by working the knit stitch back and forth until you've run out of yarn. And that would be, in my estimation, a fine beginning project. Let me pull some more yarn up here. It keeps getting wrapped around my chair. Okay, so we're still doing purl. We have 3 more left here. We're going to make sure we knit those and not purl them. And if you're not sure how many more you have left and you want to use a stitch marker to remind you, that would be a good thing to do. Okay, so now I have 3 left. So now I'm going to go back to knitting. 1, 2, and 3. Let's take a look at our scarf now. Okay, so you can see how this is turning out. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead. I'll show you one more row, and then I'm going to send you off to complete this. I'm going to simply, this is row 2 now of our stitch repeat. Now another way you can realize what you need to do, when you see these stitches, which is like really the front side of a purl, or actually of a knit stitch, if you see this particular pattern, you know you have the front side facing, and you're going to just knit all the way across. When you see this side of the project facing, you know you're going to knit 3, purl 9, and then knit 3 again. Okay, it's a very visual project. All right, so for this is row 2. We're just going to knit straight across. So I'm going to go ahead and work this, and then I'm just going to continue working row 1, row 2, row 1, and row 2, and then I will show you what I have as I get near the end of my ball of yarn, because what we're going to do is the last 4 rows are simply going to be straight knitting across back to that garter stitch. So I will show you that when I get to that point. Now after working these 2 rows back and forth, this is what I have, and I am just using 1 skein of this yarn. So this is actually going to be a shorter scarf. then maybe some of you would prefer, this would be great for a child scarf, or just, a simple scarf to, keep your neck warm, and that will fit very nicely inside your coat in the wintertime. However, if you wanted to make this longer, it would be easy. All you need to do is add an additional skein of yarn and just keep on going. But I'm going to show you how to finish the scarf. As shown here, this is approximately 35 inches so far. So the next step is we are going to simply work 4 more rows of just knitting straight across, so that the end of this scarf matches the way we started it. So go ahead and work the next 4 rows just straight knitting. Now you notice I'm starting with the back side, or the pearls side showing. So I'm just going to let's push this over here. Just work that knit stitch all the way across. So I'll show you what I have after 4 rows of this. After working those 4 rows of the knit stitch across, this is what the end of the scarf is going to look like so far. Now we're going to work the row to bind off the stitches. Okay, so this is very interesting, so I'm going to try to go kind of slowly here in case you've not seen this before. Okay, we're simply going to knit the first 2 stitches off. And then once you have those 2 stitches, we're going to pick this stitch up over the last one, just like that. And that is 1 stitch bound off. And so we're going to knit another stitch, slide off, and then pick that stitch up and over the last stitch. Okay, and that's what we're going to do. I'm just going to do this with you all the way across, so there's no doubt. This is a little bit of a slower process, and you might want to actually try to do this a little loosely too. You don't want to pull these strands too tightly, because then it'll be bound kind of tight on the end. So if you wanted to give a little more slack, that actually might be helpful. So if you're a crocheter watching this for the first time, I hope this is helping to give you some courage, to try this. It took me many years to even, get to where I enjoyed knitting, and partly because no one had ever taught me how to use the continental method, which is so similar to crochet. It really was very little of a transition for me to go from one to the other. And what's really cool about knitting is there are really only 2 basic stitches. Of course, there are many different ways to use those stitches, but where crochet has probably 5 to 6 basic stitches, knitting has 2, the knit and the purl, and both of those were embodied in this particular project. And once you learn those, and of course casting on and binding off, you've got the basics. And then from that point on, it's very easy to learn additional skills, such as adding stitches in, and as well as knitting 2 together. I can even show you that real quick. If you're going to knit 2 together, you just do 2 like this, and you knit them together, and that's one way that you decrease the number of stitches in knitting as you go across. But let's just go ahead and just continue here on binding these off. Okay, looks like after this we have 1 more to go. I probably did this a little on the tight side, but I think it'll be okay. And 1 more here. Let's go ahead and lift this over. Okay, and let's go ahead and put that through. Let's go ahead and clip a generous. I like to leave more of a tail than necessary, just because it makes it easier to hide. So this is the end of our scarf. Okay, and that should match the beginning pretty well. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to hide these loose ends, and there are a variety of ways and opinions on how to do this. And the bottom line is we're just going to hide it as best we can so that the string doesn't pop out again. So the first thing we do is thread our yarn. Okay, and so now I'm going to come up through some of these stitches here along the side. Then I'm going to kind of come down. I'm going to go up some more. And I think that's going to be pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and trim this close. And try to be careful not to trim the stitches, and that should be hidden in there. And so all I need to do is hide one more strand, and then I'm ready to go. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed making the Easy Beginner Knit Scarf with me today. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Take care. God bless.